Hi, welcome to Rent Prep for Landlords. I'm Andrew Schultz, Community Manager here at Rent Prep. I'm also a licensed real estate broker in the state of New York with over 14 years of experience in the property management and rental property industries. Today's video is right up my alley, actually. We're going to be talking about the 10 questions you have to ask before you hire a property manager. Let's get to it. Hiring a property manager is a serious commitment, and it's not a step that you should take lightly. Most people transition from some form of self-management into hiring a property manager, and whenever you're turning control of an asset over to someone, especially when you're just beginning the business of real estate investing and you're just beginning a relationship with someone, it can be very stressful. By the time you're done with this video, you'll have a great set of interview questions that you can ask any potential property management companies that you're considering hiring to make sure that they're going to fit your needs. Let's go ahead and jump right into the questions here. We're going to start with question 1, which is pretty straightforward. Are you a licensed property manager or do you have any certifications? So in many states, there's going to be some sort of license required to do property management. In state of New York, if you are doing property management on behalf of someone else, you need to be a licensed real estate broker or you need to be a licensed real estate agent operating under a broker that knows that you're operating a property management business. There are a ton of certifications out there for both residential and commercial property managers, with the two main residential side organizations being the National Apartment Association, NAA, and the National Association for Residential Property Managers, NARPM, which is what I'm a member of. Any property manager who does not have proper licensure and is operating a property management company is operating illegally. So you need to understand that if there is a license required in your state, it's very easy to find out just by doing a little bit of Googling, but you need to make sure that if someone's not properly licensed, that they're not in control of your asset. On to question 2, which is how many properties are you currently managing and what type of properties are they? You're looking for 2 answers in this question. First, you want to find out if someone is managing properties in the same area and of a similar style to your property. The reason for this is you don't want to hand off property management to a company that is only managing large multifamily properties when you only have one single family. Your property is not going to do well in that management system. You're looking for a company that's managing property in your area and managing property that's of a similar style to yours so that you know that you're going to kind of fit in the wheelhouse of that organization. You also want to make sure that the property manager is not stretching themselves too thin by taking on too many units. This is a very common problem, especially with young property management companies. And it's one of those situations that it's going to be a little bit harder to gauge this over the phone as you're talking to someone, but you can definitely ask how many units a company has under management, how big their staff is. Most companies are going to be pretty forthcoming with that information. Question 3 is a critical one. What is your fee structure? When it comes down to property management, there are a lot of different fees that can be charged beyond just the basic property management fee. And property managers can charge you for anything from leasing to advertising to maintenance to anything in between. You need to make sure that you have a really good feel for what the true fee structure is of this management company and compare what they tell you on the phone to what you see in their property management agreement. A lot of times you'll find that there are some extra fees that get snuck in there on the property management agreement that you may not have been made aware of during your phone call with them. And once you're signed on to one of those property management agreements, you might be stuck for a period of a year. So you really need to understand what you sign before you sign it. Make sure that you have a good feeling for what the fee structure is for any management company that you are considering. Question number 4 is, can you send me some sample reports? A property manager should be able to send you some sample reports showing what you're going to receive from them on a monthly basis. Typically, this is going to be some sort of an income and expense statement that'll show all of your rents in and then all of your expenses back out. But really what you're going to want to know is what is it that the property manager is going to send you? How often are they going to send you that information? When are you going to receive it? Is it going to come via email or how do they send it to you? Things of that nature. If you have special reporting requirements that you need, perhaps your accountant needs to see things in a certain format or whatever the case may be, now is a good opportunity to talk about those concerns with your property management company before you sign on, because if they're not able to produce the reports in the fashion that you need, it could become a problem for you sometime down the road. Question number 5 is, how are your potential tenants screened? So at some point in the life of your rental, you're going to have a turnover. It's pretty much just a fact of life. You may even be turning it over to the property management company that you're selecting completely vacant, and one of the first things that they're going to have to do is find you a new tenant. So you need to make sure that your property manager is following fair housing laws in addition to having systems in place to screen for your potential tenants using whatever the criteria are that you're allowed to screen for in your area. Different states are going to have different restrictions, things such as eviction searches, liens, judgments, what sort of income verification is available. There are a lot of different aspects that go into tenant screening, but you want to make sure that your property manager has a good set of tenant selection criteria that follow the fair housing guidelines, and that it's easy for tenants to actually get in and see apartments and easy for tenants to apply. It's not uncommon for something to get missed in tenant screening, and when something gets missed in tenant screening, it can cost you big in either lost rents or a damage or an eviction or something along those lines. So really understanding how your property manager goes about screening for new tenants, especially tenants that are going to be living in your unit, is going to be critical to your success. Question 6 is, how does your maintenance work? Depending on the size of the management company, they may outsource maintenance to outside vendors, or they may have interior vendors, internal vendors that work on the properties that they manage, or they could even have some sort of a hybrid model. And depending on what type of work is being done, you may actually need to bring in somebody that's licensed in a particular trade, such as electrical or plumbing. So understanding who's going to be doing the maintenance on your property is important. Understanding whether or not those people are licensed and insured is also going to be important. Those are both things that your property manager should be taking care of on your behalf, ensuring that the vendors that they work with have the proper licenses and the proper insurances, but it never hurts to double check to make sure that everything is still being done the way that it's supposed to. Be sure that any vendor that's being sent into your property has the correct insurances. Again, this is something that your property manager should be taking care of on your behalf, but it's good to know that they're taking care of it so that you don't have to worry about it. Question number 7 is, how is the rent collected? Different property managers are going to have different methods by which tenants can pay rent to them on a monthly basis. Some will go out to the property to collect it. Some will have drop boxes at their offices. Some will have you pay online. Others will have you going directly to a bank. There are a ton of different ways to receive rent payments. Essentially, what you're looking for by asking this question is that the tenants have multiple options to make rent payments. And because you don't want a tenant to ever have the excuse of, oh, I couldn't go to the rental office to make my rent payment, and that's the only place I can make my payment. So tenants should have multiple different ways that they can make rent payments independent of the property management office even being open. So something like being able to mail it, something like being able to drop it off at the office, being able to walk into a Walmart or CVS 7-Eleven, make a payment that way, going to a bank to make a direct payment. There should be multiple ways, multiple avenues for your tenants to be able to get rent payments to your property manager. Ask your property manager how they receive rents, what are the different methods that tenants can use to make rent payments, and honestly, at this point, there should be some sort of an online rent payment option. Any property manager that's not running some sort of a rent payment option for an online platform in 2022 is kind of behind the times at this point. Understanding how your rent is collected and where that rent is going to be deposited, whether it's into the property manager's account or into your account directly, that's going to be very, very important. So make sure that you iron all that stuff out prior to signing on for a property management agreement. Question 8 is, can I see some of the sample documents that you use? At the very least, you're going to want to see a copy of their property management agreement. You're going to want to read through that top to bottom, left to right before you sign off on it, obviously. So the property management agreement is going to be critical. You need to see that before you agree to sign on anything, obviously, but having some time to review that document certainly is to your benefit. We already talked about property owner financials in a different part of the video, but I did want to mention that that would fall under this section as well. Make sure that you get a copy of a sample report so you understand what the information is that's going to be conveyed to you on a monthly basis or however frequently. And in addition to that, you may actually want to take some time to look at a sample rental application, a move-in, move-out report so that you know what the property manager is looking for when tenants move in and when tenants move out of apartments. And you should probably get a copy of their lease and take a look at that as well. The lease is especially important because essentially if the property management company is using their lease, they're binding you as the property owner to the terms and conditions of that lease with whatever tenant they place. So you want to make sure that the lease matches up with the property, make sure that there isn't anything in there that would be in violation of your local laws or your state laws or even federal law. And you want to make sure that the lease is appropriate for the property. Again, you don't want to use a commercial lease on a residential property. You may not want to use a multifamily lease on a single family home or something of that nature. It's a good idea to take a look at the lease and find out exactly what it is that the property manager is presenting. It's also worth noting that just because they have a lease doesn't mean that it's a good lease. We recently took over a client from another property management company, and as we started going through all of the tenant leases, we discovered that the property management company was literally using a one-page form lease that they would handwrite in the tenant's name and the rent amount and security and things of that nature. It also turns out that they weren't licensed, but that's another story for another day. If a property manager is committing a tenant to a lease, they're also committing you to that lease, so you really need to understand what that lease has inside of it. Question number 9 is, how long is your management agreement? It's always good to know how long your contractual obligations are, and property management is no different. Most property management agreements are going to be for a set term, typically in a 1-year range. Some agreements are automatically going to renew after that first year. That's how ours are set up. And some property management agreements are going to be renewed on a yearly basis in case there are any changes to the language in the agreement or whatever the case may be. When you're reviewing the sample management agreement, you should definitely be looking at the language to make sure that you're comfortable with everything, and it's probably a good idea to have an attorney review it as well. That's not to say that your property manager is going to make changes to their agreement as a result of concerns that you come to, but at the very least, you'll be able to make a decision as to whether or not you're comfortable signing off on that agreement as is, or if they're willing to make modifications. Some will, some won't, but it's worth making sure that you're comfortable with everything that's in that agreement prior to signing off on it. One key aspect of the property management agreement that a lot of people don't realize is that there's oftentimes termination penalties if you decide that you want to walk away from that property management agreement prior to the end of the agreement. So if you're trying to terminate because it's a bad management relationship, there might be some fees that are associated with that. So if you're going to get 6 months into this agreement and find out that, okay, my property manager hasn't found me a tenant for my lower unit, my upper tenant is no longer paying rent, this guy's not getting the job done, and then on the way out, you're going to get charged a whole bunch of fees by that property manager, that's obviously a concern. So double check your agreement and make sure that you're comfortable with whatever language is in there, and make sure that you understand what the process is if you do need to terminate a property management agreement in order to move on to a different manager. And finally, question 10 is probably one of the best questions that you can ask. Do you have references? It's always a good idea to speak with 2 or 3 people that have worked with this property manager already, and I would recommend asking for both client and vendor references. When you're talking to clients, you can ask all of the client type questions, like how's the communication? Do they send the money when they say they're going to send the money? Things of that nature. But you should also talk to a couple of different vendors that work with them, because that's going to give you a peek behind the curtain, if you will, a little bit more behind the scenes look at how a property management company operates. It might give you some more insight as to how they work and things of that nature. Does this property management company pay their vendors on time? Do you have communication issues with the staff members at the company? Does it take long for work orders to be approved after you've submitted an estimate? These are all things that vendors will know that you wouldn't necessarily think to ask, but knowing that a property management company has good vendor relationships is generally a pretty good way to determine if they are an upstanding company or not. If they have a lot of vendors that don't want to do business with them anymore, chances are they've done something in the past that's caused that. So it's definitely worth asking the question of the property management company, get some references from vendors and get some references from clients, and talk to everybody to really get a feel for whether or not this property manager is going to be a good fit for you. So there you have it. Some great interview questions for you to consider when you are interviewing property managers. It may seem like a tedious process, and in some ways I suppose it kind of is, but having a solid property manager in place will make your investments run more smoothly for many, many years to come. Take the time to be thorough because your continued growth depends on it. Have you considered hiring property management for your investments in the past? Do you have a property manager now that you've had a good or a bad experience with? Do us a favor and drop a comment down below. Let us know how your experience has been with property management, because we're genuinely interested. And on a personal level, I own a management company, so I'm always interested in seeing how other property managers are performing, whether it's here locally or nationwide, because it gives us a good idea as to things that we can work on to improve in our business. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm Andrew Schultz with RentPrep.com. We'll talk to you soon.